So we're here talking about Conference 2020 for Mainland Southeast Asia Group. We
Indeed.
decide we decided to go ahead and still have a conference virtually. So
Yeah, we did, and it was an interesting experience. It was more work than you might have thought, actually. And
oh golly, yeah, I was exhausted.
I mean, I'm not sure
Did
how
you have
many I'm not sure how many years we've been doing the in-person conference for, but the planning of the in-person conference is really able to leverage the experience of previous years. Year on year on year.
right?
Things just keep on getting incrementally better. Whereas this seemed a bit different.
It was surprisingly a lot of work, but it was actually there wasn't a lot of people who worked on it. So it was kind of interesting in that regard.
Yeah,
So quite a small team.
yeah.
So, but yeah. So it was. What were some of your fondest memories from the virtual conference?
My fondest memory would have to be the stories of impact session. It was just like one day before or 2 days before we said, you know, with a technology like Zoom, we can actually do this for a worldwide audience. We can do this for anyone that would come. People back home supporting churches, partners, funding partners. We could do it for anyone. Anyone could join. We just send them the link and they join. So extending that invitation, I think, was great. And we had, hundreds of people join. I think we had
Mm.
171 connections, and sometimes there was, you know,
171. Wow, that's cool.
yep, yep. So, yeah, it was like double the size of our group in terms of like connections. Not
Yeah.
people. Sometimes you have two people on a call or whatever, but yeah, we had a lot of people come. It was really exciting. There's some fantastic feedback. So all our guests really appreciated the invitation, and they really appreciated what we were able to share in that stories of impact session. What about yourself, Marcus? What was your personal highlight?
I think it's actually very similar to what you said. Like we had some retired and affiliate members who'd been in their home countries for quite a number of years,
Hmm.
and they were as keen as mustard to join in. They were prepared to stay up till almost midnight. They were prepared to get up super early to participate, and there was just so much excitement. So um, there was just they were just excited. Oh golly, I haven't been to group conference in years, and this is a way for me to do it. So some of our most senior members, the eldest of them, were staying up really late. So in the United States, so it was really, I think that was really cool. And I think another highlight was the ability to have our kids connect with the youth, uh, uh, the uh, the kids program directors who
Mm.
have been a church that have been supporting us for what 7 years, 6 years by
Yeah,
sending a team
yeah,
over. And
yeah.
so because even though we're all in lockdown and they can't travel, they still gave us a couple of hours each morning, or a couple of mornings with an hour to work with the children, and they could continue to build their relationship. I think that was just awesome. So the fact that people who couldn't participate suddenly could was really, really awesome. So similar
Mm,
to what you're
mm.
saying. So
Yeah, yeah.
okay, so yeah, some really good memories there. So Campbell, our group's been holding these conferences for a long time, and when we finally decided that it just wasn't going to work due to COVID-19, I can remember you came into my office and said, "I think we should still hold a conference. In fact, I think it's more important now than ever." So just can you walk me through how you got there and what you were thinking?
Well, I was thinking, what's the main reason that we have conference? Why do we have conference? Why do we get together? And a lot of it's about building community, right? We really want to maintain this identity that we're all in this together, that we can share one another's sorrows, we can share one another's burdens, and we can support and encourage one another. And uh, we do that by getting together. We have like prayer and sharing groups, and we share one with another. We spend time um, over the table, with our fellowship at meal times. Um, we don't really say that's what what conference is all about from the floor so often, but it's one of the big benefits is just establishing that community of grace that we can relate with each other, that we can um, interact with each other in person. So many of our teams work at a distance, right? We're remote. So we often have some other purpose that we have, like training, or we have a business conference. So we've got some work that needs to be done. But really, for me, the big benefit is that community building activity. So when I first came to talk to you about it, and we were looking at doing, virtual conference, really in the back of my mind was this is the benefit. We need to spend
Mm,
time with one another. We need to support one
mm.
another. And so there's also a bit of so like Kiwi never say die. I'm sure lots of other cultures have a never say die attitude, but COVID can do all sorts of things, but it can't take our conference. So there was definitely a bit of that going on too, I'm sure.
Cool, cool.
So then the thing is, um, we had to recognize between you and me, we had this conversation that it's going to be different, right? You can't handle a
Yeah,
Zoom
yeah,
call
yeah.
for hours and hours on end. You can't do Zoom for as long as you can do an in-person meeting. So, Marcus, you really did seem to enjoy organizing this conference. So in particular, like putting together the schedule. So tell me a bit about the planning. Let's unpack that a bit. What was the planning like? How was it different to an in-person event? What sort of factors were taken into account?
Right. Well, just to put it out there to begin with, our conferences are pretty packed. You mentioned this, and as we were going through the process of considering what could we do to maintain our conference, we did actually review when COVID started to be quite a significant factor on our radar if we could have a lightweight conference. So I'd already gone
Mm.
back around and just said, well, look, what does a pared down conference look like? And I got a bit of feedback in that from some of our key people. We've got one of our conference coordinators who's been doing it for a number of years. Our operations director, she has a lot of feedback on some of the things, and so I got a bit of feedback. But we pared it down, and then after that, we still realised one of the first things that we did when COVID hit and everyone was in lockdown, we had a day of prayer and a day of planning to help people uh, do prepare and connect with others, but also think about this is going to be different now. So how do I plan for this different COVID new way of working? So anyway, we worked out from that day of prayer and planning that a day on Zoom is just awful. It's too much. You can't do it. It worked, but it's just way too much. And to do that for 6 days or 7 days just wasn't going to work. So I think we
So
looked at perhaps, yeah, go.
I think you just touched on something there that I think was actually very valuable in terms of like a process that we were doing. Is we didn't just launch straight into a full-on
No.
virtual group conference. We're saying, how can we actually experiment with this technology, but let's be intentional about it, right? And so we
Yeah,
were doing
yeah.
these COVID Q&As, and we did this, like you say, the prayer and planning day, and that was
Yep.
fantastic. But we learned from that as well, saying, okay, so
Yeah.
we need to really pare down the schedule. So there was a lot of intentionality that I know that you put in as well into how we would actually um, get the sort of like biggest bang for our buck, as it were. What were the things that really mattered that we were going to include in the conference? So
Yeah.
what were some of the things that were included? What did you keep,
Well,
and what did you
yeah.
throw
So
out?
yeah. So a lot of the things that we kept were things that people really love and help us bind together as a community. So one of the things that we kept was our prayer and sharing groups, and we did that by inviting people to either pick mornings or afternoons for a couple of days, and then just have an hour in a small group where they could just update one another how the last year has been and pray for each other. And they were groups of about 10 people. Some were couples, some were singles. And that has always come up very highly after group conferences. And I thought, well, that's easy to do. We can just either do breakout rooms on Zoom, or we can ask for people to let us use their Zoom rooms. If we can't get a hold of paid accounts, we can do it for 40 minutes. And that's still highly meaningful. So that was definitely one of the first things that came on there. A second thing that was really important, you mentioned a little earlier, was the stories of impact. We're a big group spanning a handful of countries, and we don't often get to see each other, and we don't often get to hear the stories of how other people are going and how the Lord's moving in some of our far-flung regions. And so it's quite significant for us to have a private conversation once a year and hear really amazing stories that may not be suitable for publishing on the web or putting in newsletters or anything like that. So those were definitely two key things. And I think the third thing that was perhaps really really important for us was marking some milestones. So we often like, as part of our conference, we recognise members who are going through major transitions. We often recognise students who are graduating from our families. We often recognise people who are retiring. We honour them, but we also it's also a time to acknowledge our new members and bring them in. So they were some really key things, and we just the other thing is when we looked at the big schedule, we just said, what can we do in an hour and a half? You mentioned the Q&As a little earlier. You've really got an hour and a half to play with on a Zoom call before people just really just burn out. You can't really do a 2-hour Zoom call. An hour and a half is about the upper limit. So some things we had to just say, well, look, normally we might like to hear from every regional director, but this year we need to cut it down. Or normally we might like to have a range of things. So
that's right. In the stories of impact, we wound up calling it selected stories of impact, didn't we?
Yeah, instead of having
That's
each
right.
director give a story of impact. So
Yeah.
there was a lot of things like that, and I guess some other things. We had to drop some cool ideas that we thought we could try but wouldn't work, because one of the key things about conference is that face-to-face contact. So for new members or for people you haven't seen, so we acknowledge that Zoom is good, but it has its limitations. So there was no, like for our conference, one of the key things is often professional develop workshops. We didn't really have many of those, other than perhaps during some shared common periods, because there wasn't that much personal interface. So we tried to have it more like family meeting time. What do we as an organisation, as a group, as an entity need to hear as much as we can? So we just focused on that, really. But that includes having some fun, doesn't it, Campbell?
Yes, yes. Fun
So
is a very important part of conference.
absolutely. So tell us about some of those evening fun activities that we normally do as a group.
Well, one of our members, Chris Hurt, he's a big fan of organising skit night. Skit night's always been a
Yeah.
feature. So he was keen to continue with that tradition. And maybe we could invite people to record videos, right, in their homes. Video their skit or their talent. So we put on this show called MECAG's Got Talent. So we had
Yeah.
two nights. So whereas like in the schedule, the morning was kind of the busy time with the program, as it were. We
Mm.
did have again. It was an hour slot, wasn't it, for the
Yeah, I think so.
entertainment?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think they went a bit long. Say might have gone a bit 90 minutes ish.
And
Seems
and
like
I
that's the
think we
Zoom norm.
tried to, yeah, it is. We tried to time it so that it wouldn't be so late that the little kids couldn't participate if possible.
That's right.
So
So we went from 6 to 7, um,
yeah.
and people seemed pretty good with that. So that was really good. And we did skit night on one night with or MECAG's Got Talent, we called it, and then on the next night we did Just Dance, where we would you can do these Just Dance videos. It's based on the Xbox game, and you had everyone on Zoom doing that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Now, I must admit, some of our numbers on the Just Dance were a little bit down on the main meetings,
that's
but
true. That's true. We had about I think we had about 15 doing Just Dance.
I reckon it might have been a bit more than that. I reckon it was
Yeah,
closer to 20. But
yeah,
one thing that really was great was whole families were getting involved.
yeah.
And, people had put on their, for the dancing one, they'd put on some sports clothes and they were just getting involved and they'd push back the chairs in their lounge and,
Yes, yes. Yeah,
you
made
know,
for some
it
great
just,
Facebook posts. Facebook
yeah,
posts
yeah,
that really did, yeah.
and I think it's also, there's certainly exercise is a bit of an issue during COVID, so that was actually a really
Yeah.
wise choice. So
So that
cool.
does lead on to one of the questions you had there, which was like about the technology in a sense.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, tell us about some of the things that you found made life easier. You did a lot
Well,
of the hosting, so
well,
tell
there's
us what made it
there's
easy.
one of the things that was a huge concern was the ability to play video.
Mm,
Playing video. If Chris is going to be doing these skit night videos, um, and if you've ever tried to just do share screen and play a video, that's awful. You get like video missing, and we wanted to be able to do worship, right? We wanted to
yes.
be able to worship and um, how do you do the words, right? Where's the projector with the words? What does that look like? So I think I've got a demo I can actually play here, um, just to show you the sort of things that we did. We'll give it a go anyway.
All right.
So I take it you can see that.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah,
it's sounding really quite good.
yeah.
I mean, it's
we were waiting without
Sorry, she
hope,
shouldn't be that loud,
without
really. But
light, till from heaven you
so, like,
came
I'm just
running.
speaking over the
There
top of
was
the song. This is the song that we
mercy in your
played
eyes
to worship to,
to
but you can see that we've got the
fulfill the
words. We
law
actually did
and
that words,
promise
so
to
using again
ever
free
keep
software,
your word
yep.
from a
OpenLP,
throne of endless glory.
so that we could actually put these, the two lines of words up there. And again, it's just using OpenLP in the normal way that you would. Um, and again, we use some other free software like Open Broadcast Studio as well, and shortcuts and editor to put some of the video material together. But by using this to play it out, it actually sounds pretty good, right? So you can
Yeah.
you can see the full motion video; it all looks just fine,
Praise forever to
and
the
you have a lot more
King
control over
of
the volume
Kings.
and as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
To reveal
Right,
the
I'll stop that. There we
kingdom.
go. And of course, you can do that with any video, and we did that with Just Dance as well for the entertainment. And again, the full video worked really, really well. So people
Yeah.
were able to engage with that kind of media.
It was quite interesting when we did the skit night that people had recorded things on their phones and there was a bit of sound quality issues with that. I mean, we're looking there at a studio recording of that worship song, and it is wonderful that these churches are putting all these YouTube worship videos out. So yeah, but
Oh, it's,
you do need to be wary with the sound and sharing videos. That's a real problem.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Audio is just so important.
It
So
is.
yeah.
It is. Any
So
other
no,
any
and
other?
yeah, thanks. Sorry, there is a bit of delay on Zoom. It's what you get. You need to make space. So yes, I think the other thing that we found was that you need to be very intentional in terms of the team that hosts the meeting. Like if you're putting,
Yeah.
don't treat it like a video call, as it were. Treat it like an event.
Mm.
So you're wanting, so just some of the preparation. We have a run sheet. We actually have a run sheet for this call going on right now. But we had a run sheet for everything, obviously all shared with the participants. Um, Shared with the planners, and the people
Mm.
involved in the event, right?
Yep.
And so everyone knew what was happening next, because we couldn't go and talk to anyone. We couldn't grab someone, in the room.
Yeah.
Very, very difficult. So we made sure that we had a back channel. So there was a back channel chat going on, sometimes Signal, sometimes WhatsApp, right? So not using the Zoom chat, so that we could actually talk as organizers, and sort of like make changes on the fly to the program, or make sure, oh, it'd be good if you could pray now or do this now, and get that organized,
Yeah,
behind the scenes, as it were.
yeah,
And similarly, like keeping the house in order as well. Having someone who's monitoring the chat. If someone's got a concern or something's not working well, being able to process that and have a way of getting the attention of the current presenter as well, right, through that
yeah.
back channel, so that it's not all on the current presenter, who's busy enough as it is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there were some excellent examples of the importance of having like a couple, somebody hosting the call and perhaps chairing the meeting, but having a couple of co-hosts in the background.
Mm,
So some families joined with small children, and that's great. But when they've got an open mic and somebody's having a bit of a loud dislike with the food that they're being given right now, or their snack, or their brother, or whatever the case may be, someone's got to find that open microphone and shut it down so that it, to help. And another thing that was really helpful is when you're hosting or chairing a meeting on Zoom, if someone else can watch the chat box for you, and like on a radio show, I suppose is the way to describe it. Like a producer comes in and says, "Oh, look, we've got someone online too who's got a question," or "We've got someone who's added a question into the chat box. Campbell, can you answer this?" And it just seems to smooth it off if you act like you're a pair of co-hosts.
yeah,
So that works well. That works well.
yeah. And so, Marcus, tell me a bit about when it came to hosting the meetings and chairing the meeting. Whenever we had like a question and answer session,
Yep.
how did people get the floor? I thought that worked pretty well.
Yeah, I actually thought that worked well too. See, in a normal like in a normal town hall meeting or in a conference room or something, people can simply raise their hand to get attention. And Zoom has a little button that says raise hand, but that's dependent on the host or the co-host spotting that tiny little logo on their picture. So one of the things that we learned using these Q&As in the day of prayer was that actually we can use the camera as a way to gain attention. So in bigger meetings, people quite normally mute themselves, or the host might ask them to mute. But we thought, what if we could use the camera as a way to gain attention? So there was a couple of instances where people were interviewing other people, and then they could turn off their camera and somebody could turn on their camera to ask a question to the person being interviewed. And so that was really effective at just, so that way you had the focus of just the questioner and the interviewee, and then you had the host on another camera, and then the questioner would go away and the host and the interviewee would be there, and then another question would pop up with the camera. So that worked very well, particularly in larger groups.
And so we were very intentional about setting the
Yep,
expectation at the front of the meeting. Okay, so
absolutely.
everyone stay muted unless you're speaking, and if you're not part of the panel or not part of whatever's going on, turn your video off as well. And
Yeah,
that depended on the event, didn't it? Like, for some of the
it
events we
did.
wanted all cameras on, please.
Yeah. I think sometimes you feel a bit bossy telling people to turn off their cameras or turn them on. But actually, if you do it politely and respectfully and you explain why you're doing this, most people were very compliant and very eager to help and work. And I think it created a flow. I'll just add a caveat to that. Sometimes when you're doing an interview, the interviewer wants to step back and give the person who's being interviewed a bit more time. And one other thing that the co-host could do is actually pick the speaker's video and click a button called Spotlight, and that popped them up to full screen. And so, for example, if someone's sharing a testimony and the host wants to give them the floor for a few minutes whilst they talk, we can manually spotlight them, and so they've got the full focus of everybody. which is kind of what happens in real life. You've just got to figure out how to make it work for you in Zoom. So yeah, I think we did all right.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yep. We managed to sort of like string a few things together, but I think it really was that treating every session, and we only had three major sessions.
Yes,
There
you're
were, there
right.
were three
After
major sessions, one each day, but then there was the devotions and the sharing
yes,
groups and so on.
yeah, the common period times and the fun
Yeah,
times. But yeah,
yeah. So it's in those common period times where we actually did put it together like an event, and we even had someone sharing about New Testament dedication. That was a very
yeah,
special time, to be
that
able
was
to just like honor the achievements of our members and their teams, and just the blessing that has been to the wider community, but also just to honor them by giving them that space and saying, hey,
yeah,
we're all here to listen to your story,
yeah,
and to be able to express good job and well done, that was a fantastic time, I thought.
yeah. That was really good. That was really good. So I'm just trying to think if there was anything else technologically or method wise. I think there was a lot of work done into making sure that everyone was communicated to as clearly as possible, and I think having that run sheet, setting the expectations and setting the tone for each meeting, and treating it like this is something that we're actually doing properly. We're not just a bunch of guys hanging around having a chat. You know.
Yes, yes. Well, it very
So
much did have that tone to it, didn't it? That there was this sense of expectation. Oh,
yeah,
this is people know where this is going.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, and
yeah.
we were quite. I think we'd built that up over various different meetings, so that was quite helpful.
So, just looking at the time, looking back, Marcus, like what are
Yep.
things that you were glad you did, or you might have changed? I know you had a comment there about the Psalms
Yeah.
sessions. Yeah.
Yeah. So SARMS is just a way of describing common block periods during a conference where people can.
You can share the acronym. Come on.
All right, all right. I'll
Uh,
share it. So a couple of years ago, we wanted to introduce a common block period where people could share what they were learning or have one-on-ones or small group meetings that were not scheduled by the scheduling committee. And I love my co-workers here, and I know that having a good acronym is always a good thing for an SIL person. So I created what was called SARMS time. So they're participant scheduled and led micro sessions. So they're kind of like breakouts. They're kind of like a common period. So what we do is we set aside a couple of hours in the afternoon every day, and we just say if you want to. Now, how we would do this at a conference center is we'd say, here's the sign up sheet. You tell us what you want a space for. You tell us what time. And then, I'll help you find a space with the appropriate size for the amount of people who are meeting. With Zoom, it's a little different. We had to sort of organize a bunch of Zoom rooms and have them prepared. We had to have all the accounts ready. We had to have the codes, the access codes, passwords, etc. So I think one thing that was perhaps a little underappreciated or perhaps a little underutilized was these common period times. And something I wish I had have done a bit better was it's quite easy to draw up a schedule for rooms and times in a conference hall. It's a lot trickier to keep track of a bunch of web links with passwords and code numbers. And I really wished that I had access. People had let me have access to about 7 or 8 Zoom room accounts, and I really didn't feel like I managed that as well as I could have. So that were two things that I'd like to do differently. But one thing that I think that was just really great, that I really enjoyed, was the fact that people were willing to lend us their Zoom rooms, that they were willing to step back and set that time aside for conference. And so I think the participation was high, and people were really they saw the value of using these technologies and sharing those technologies. So that was just really encouraging to me. I'm glad we invited people in to be a part of the process and share their resources. So, yeah. All right. What about you, Campbell? You're the group director. You did a fair amount of work. What things would you do again, and what would you differently next time?
Well, I think it, like 95% went really, really well. So
Yes.
let's, keep this in perspective. It was really good. A lot of people
Yeah.
really appreciated it. It was a fantastic time. But I think I came to appreciate through this event that in these like 90-minute sessions, these instances of contact, every single instance that we have is like a point of contact. But then it's the only point of contact.
Mm.
Like in an in-person event, you have lots more opportunities for contact. You can get the word around at dinner, at lunch, at meals, at
Yeah,
snack breaks. You can say, "Okay, everyone, it's time to do this," and everyone's all co-located. So it's not that difficult to communicate en masse. And
that's
so
right.
in these sessions, I think that because it just makes that contact point so much more valuable. And we didn't really connect the whole 3 day event as a cohesive event where we could say, okay, coming up tomorrow, we've got this happening. We did that a little bit, but I think that the Psalm sessions, for example, because they were smaller groups, smaller opportunities, they were a little bit vague, so
Yeah,
people didn't know.
yeah.
Oh, you can meet with this person at this time, so it wasn't really highlighted at those points of contact. Um,
Right, right.
so
Yeah.
I think that's something I'd do differently is going, oh, okay, it is things like the Psalms that if they're not highly promoted, they'll be
Mm,
marginalized.
right.
Um,
And we didn't want that, but yeah, yeah.
yeah, so I think it's just really an awareness that if you do have these um, one-on-one contact opportunities, that you really do need to be so much more intentional about promoting the opportunities and all that's going on in the virtual space. Because
Yeah,
once people get out of the call, you've lost your
they're
ability to
gone.
communicate, except by email or whatever, very low bandwidth.
And
Um,
that was actually a big problem because some of these psalm sessions with things like some of our counselling team willing to help people with strategies and coping mechanisms for their work and for their stress levels, and it could have been promoted a little better. I agree with you on that. That could have received a little more spotlight.
mm,
And your comment about the email is actually really important. One of the things I was probably the contact person for the vast majority of things. And that was fine, except until I started co-hosting meetings. And the problem was there were lots of people, not too many, but there was enough for me to be a little bit concerned after the fact that I'd opened my email after the meeting was closed and people were saying, I can't find the meeting. Can you send me the link? And we've already started. So one thing that we would do differently is have a contact person who's not part of
mm,
hosting the
mm.
call, who can
And
get people into their rooms.
yeah, and to be fair though, we had been very intentional about having one document that was the
Absolutely.
the go-to place, and the links were
Absolutely.
all there for sure. So
Yes.
everything was pretty discoverable, um,
Yep.
highly discoverable, I'd say. But even so, you still have people who, spur of the moment. Oh, you sent me an email about that a week ago? I had no idea. Um,
Yeah, and it's like in a normal conference. Somebody walks
that's
in
right.
late to a meeting and they need to find someone at the door to point them where they're going. You know,
Yeah.
that's you have to have that as well for a
Does
virtual
make me
conference.
wonder, Marcus, how many people have actually not turned up to the resort?
Well, it's one thing to turn up to the resort. It's another thing to get lost moving from
Yeah,
one meeting to
yeah.
another. So I think it's understandable sometimes. And Look, let's remember it was at different times of the day. So for some people, they were calling in at 6 a.m, scratching for an email, trying to find a link. So yeah, but anyway, was there anything else you'd do differently next time? Or actually, let me put it this way: it's quite possible that we'll go back to an ordinary conference, face-to-face conference next time. So having seen this greater level of connectivity in terms of time zone and travel, you can connect more people using Zoom, but it's different from having a face-to-face conference. So having these two side by side, if we went back to a face-to-face conference, would you incorporate any of the Zoom ideas, or what would you do to get that higher level of engagement?
That's a fantastic point, isn't it? I think like just to have so many people just say that they appreciated the sense of connectedness with all that we're doing here, that was fantastic, and we can't ignore that. So I do think that we'll either incorporate that into future conferences. I think that might be difficult. We'll probably do that in some ways, but I think the greater opportunity is to actually do an event or some kind of event, perhaps a partner event. Let's honor the people that send us, and let's put on an event, a celebration of some kind. Where not everyone can come to a New Testament dedication in person, but maybe after the event, we can have a special event, a special online event that we do invite people to. We can do the work with the videos, and we can have live speakers as well, and just include people in these celebrations. I think people really do appreciate that connectedness, but I'm thinking perhaps as a separate event. Would be the greater value.
So okay. So instead of trying to cram everything into 1 week once a year, we might look at actually still having that face-to-face time, because that's essential for everyone to connect.
Absolutely.
And I think the ability to share a cup of coffee or a breakfast together and say, how are you going and what's life like in your world, that can't quite be replicated over Zoom. But so splitting out perhaps the different abilities and the different strengths of each thing.
Yeah, well, I think we also need to just come back to how we opened in a way, which is what's the purpose of conference? The purpose of conference is for us. It's to celebrate amongst ourselves, to share amongst ourselves, and that's fine. We should take care of ourselves. We need time to share one with another, and to be us, as opposed to being on stage for everyone to see. So if we have a partner event or some other event that's some kind of celebration, really the focus on that is sure, the subject of the event, but behind that, it's really saying we want to do this for the partners, right? The people that can't come. So in that sense, it's a different audience. The reason that the event exists is a fundamentally different purpose. And I think if we lose sight of that, the danger that we might face is our own group, our own people will feel marginalized in our conference. We're so busy taking care of making sure that we can do this for others, we're not really doing what's best for ourselves or our members. And so do want to be careful with that. Can't be all things to all people all the time.
Right? No, you got to draw some boundaries around what are we trying to achieve, and just accept that those are limitations you got to work with.
Yeah. So I do think that if we have another event for that particular purpose, I think it would go really well. So I'm quite excited about that. Really looking forward to doing more in that space.
In terms of being able to invite our partners in to see some of the things that we get blessed to see, but because of time difference and travel, they can't participate in.
That's right.
That could be really great. And then also just really being okay with keeping a group conference as a group conference. So, yeah, cool. All right. Well, that's it from me. I haven't got any more questions. I don't know about you, but
it's all good.
It's all good. Well, it's been fun having a chat. Let's see what we can do next time, eh? Hopefully next year we won't be in lock-in. Oh, yeah, okay.
One more thing. I was just thinking, so for anyone who is actually watching this and has made it to the end, well done.
Absolutely.
It's been great honor having you here. But we've also got something for you as well. So if you're looking at putting on a conference like this, we're quite happy to share all the materials that we've got. We don't have like a template or a kit or anything like that, but you're quite welcome to have access to all the materials that we produced. You can see all the emails, the Google Docs, the sort of like the master schedule, if you like, and the planning run sheets, just to see what all went into it. So you can have those absolutely free. No 0800 number. Just contact Marcus. Whoops, Marcus. There we go.
There you go. All right then. Nice one. Nice one. Okay. Well, let's call that a day. And I look forward to working with you on the next one.
Good afternoon, good evening, and
good night.
good night.
See you later.